Humanity had reached a stage in history that no one in the galaxy could have imagined. After centuries of struggle, war, and hardship, humans had finally mastered the art of living in harmony with their technology and environment. Cities no longer crowded the land, nor did smoke from factories choke the skies. Instead, they floated gracefully above oceans, perched on towering pillars of glass and metal, connected by luminous bridges that shimmered like flowing rivers of light. These cities were alive, humming with the energy of innovation, yet silent in their order and perfection. Humans moved about with purpose, their lives intricately connected to machines that were no longer tools but partners in every sense of the word. From the moment a child was born, every aspect of existence was guided by knowledge, foresight, and the relentless drive to improve the future. The galaxy looked at Earth with a mixture of admiration and fear, aware that this planet had produced a species that seemed capable of anything. The people themselves were unaware of the fear they inspired. They were too busy living, creating, and exploring. Children played in zero-gravity gardens that floated above the oceans, their laughter mingling with the soft hum of hover vehicles gliding silently through the air. Scholars walked through libraries that spanned miles, where books and digital archives existed side by side, capturing the knowledge of humanity and every civilization they had encountered. Scientists conducted experiments in laboratories that defied traditional understanding of physics, bending light, energy, and even matter itself to their will. It was an era where imagination was the only limit, and humans had pushed every boundary known to them. Yet, amidst all this progress, the seeds of fragility had quietly taken root. The very success that allowed humans to thrive had also made them vulnerable. The galaxy was vast, full of civilizations with histories stretching back millions of years. Some were allies, curious and respectful of human ingenuity, while others watched with suspicion, their intentions unclear. Humans, confident in their abilities, had not considered the reactions of these distant observers. Among the people of Earth, there was a sense of invincibility, a belief that the planet and its inhabitants could survive anything. The governments of the world had merged into a unified entity known as the United Nations of Earth, which served as both a political and technological authority. This organization coordinated the massive fleets of starships that left Earth to explore and colonize distant worlds. Diplomatic envoys traveled across the stars, establishing treaties and trade agreements with alien species, introducing humanity's values while learning from others. The galaxy seemed ready to accept humans as equals, even though many secretly doubted it. Yet, despite all these connections, no one could predict the coming events, the silence that would one day fall across the stars, and the fear it would bring. That the warning signs were subtle at first, almost imperceptible to the casual observer. Reports came in from ships traveling to remote colonies that certain regions of space were behaving strangely. Navigation systems occasionally recorded anomalies, areas where stars seemed to blink in and out of existence, or where the usual cosmic radiation patterns fluctuated inexplicably. Some dismissed these reports as sensor malfunctions or errors caused by interference from solar storms. But a few scientists, those with keen insight and curiosity, began to worry. They knew that the universe often held dangers that were invisible until it was too late. They attempted to warn governments and interstellar councils, but the messages were either ignored or underestimated. Humanity's daily life carried on, filled with new discoveries, diplomatic celebrations, and technological breakthroughs, oblivious to the undercurrent of unease that slowly began to grow across the galaxy. Even as the scientists' warnings were dismissed, rumors began to spread among those who traveled beyond Earth. Captains of long-haul spacecraft whispered about strange shadows moving across star systems, and engineers noted unexplained power fluctuations in interstellar communication networks. Alien civilizations began to notice minor disturbances as well, though none understood their significance. For the first time, humans were forced to consider that the galaxy was not just vast but unpredictable, that the universe could act in ways beyond their comprehension. And yet, their daily lives did not falter. Humans are a resilient species, one that has endured countless crises throughout its history. Even in the face of hints of danger, they continued to expand, to innovate, and to interact with the stars as if nothing could threaten their existence. There was a quiet confidence in their steps, a belief that they had mastered not only technology but destiny itself. The cities on Earth continued to evolve, becoming more than just centers of population and governance. They were now hubs of interstellar coordination, each structure integrated with communication arrays capable of transmitting messages across light. These cities were designed with elegance, blending architecture and technology in ways that made them seem almost alive. Streets were lined with gardens that glowed softly at night, while artificial rivers shimmered beneath transparent walkways. The people moved through this environment with grace and purpose, their routines synchronized not by necessity but by choice. From a distance, Earth appeared as a jewel of civilization, glowing with intelligence and life, a world that had conquered chaos and forged harmony. But even this beauty could not shield the planet from the growing unease that rippled through the galaxy. Humanity's reach extended far beyond Earth. Colonies had been established on hundreds of planets and moons, each adapted to its environment through advanced terraforming and ecological engineering. These colonies were not isolated. They were connected through a network of starships, communication satellites, and AI overseers that ensured the smooth functioning of society. People traveled freely between worlds, exchanging knowledge, culture, and technology. Alien species were common visitors to these colonies, and in many places, humans and aliens lived side by side, learning from one another. This level of interaction created both opportunities and tensions. While alliances were formed, old rivalries and grudges among alien civilizations occasionally surfaced. Some looked upon humanity's expansion with envy or suspicion, questioning whether humans were ready to share the galaxy. Others simply marveled at their audacity, unable to imagine the courage and ingenuity required to achieve what humans had accomplished, despite this apparent perfection. Small fractures existed. Not everyone shared the same vision of the future. Some factions within human society worried that too much reliance on technology might weaken the species. Others feared that contact with aliens could lead to conflicts beyond their control. These debates were often heated but usually resolved through negotiation and reason. Still, the undercurrent of doubt remained, a quiet reminder that even a species as advanced as humanity was not infallible. The galaxy, in its immensity, held dangers that humans could not yet perceive. From the edges of known space came faint signals of disturbances, rogue fleets maneuvering without clear purpose, unexplained disappearances of small stars, and anomalies that defied current understanding. Each of these incidents was minor on its own, but collectively they hinted at a universe that could not be tamed by human ingenuity alone. The people of Earth, however, remained largely unaware of these signs. Their focus was on progress, exploration, and understanding. Scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Engineers created marvels that seemed magical, and children grew up believing that the stars were within their grasp. This sense of hope and confidence defined humanity's character. They were explorers by nature, curious about the unknown and determined to leave their mark on the cosmos. Yet, in the midst of this brilliance, the stage for a momentous event was being set, a silence so profound that it would shake every civilization in the galaxy. What had seemed like the height of human achievement was, in reality, the calm before a storm, a brief pause in a story that would soon unfold with consequences no one could have predicted. As life continued, humans rarely paused to consider the larger implications of their actions. Every advancement, every technological breakthrough, and every diplomatic success brought them closer to an unshakable confidence in their place in the universe. They had become the center of attention not because they sought power, but because their capabilities demanded respect. Yet, the very success that elevated humanity also created a fragile balance. The galaxy was not a passive observer. It was filled with civilizations with motivations, fears, and ambitions. Humanity's brilliance, while awe-inspiring, had also made them targets, though no one realized it at the time. The first steps toward the silence that would soon envelop the stars were subtle, hidden in the movements of fleets, the quiet signals of distant observers, and the anomalies that humans barely noticed. These were the seeds of a fear that would one day grow so immense that it would make the galaxy tremble. Humans, immersed in their lives, never imagined that the universe would demand a pause from them. They believed in their resilience, their ingenuity, and their ability to survive any challenge. Yet the universe, vast and unpredictable, had other plans. Even as they explored the stars and built alliances, a chain of events had begun that would lead to a silence so profound that every corner of the galaxy would take notice. This silence would not come from failure or defeat, but from a choice, a decision that humanity would make in response to a threat beyond imagination. And as the people of Earth moved through their daily lives, unaware of what was approaching, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the moment when humanity would fall silent, and fear would ripple through every civilization, leaving them stunned by the power of a species that had mastered both life and death in ways no one could yet understand. The first hints of trouble began subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a soft tremor before a massive earthquake. At first, no one paid much attention. Human communications, which had once pulsed steadily across the stars, started to show irregularities. Transmission delays that were normally measured in milliseconds stretched into minutes, then hours, leaving diplomats and trade networks frustrated but not alarmed. Ships traveling to distant colonies began to report strange phenomena: sudden sensor blackouts, unexpected gravitational anomalies, and fleeting bursts of electromagnetic interference that seemed to appear and vanish without pattern. Initially, these events were dismissed as technical glitches, the result of faulty equipment or environmental factors. Yet, slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Signals from some human colonies, once reliable and robust, began to weaken, fade, and eventually disappear altogether. When attempts to contact these settlements failed, unease began to grow. Though most humans assumed there must be a logical explanation, alien civilizations were the first to notice the changes in a more profound way. Many had long relied on Earth's steady presence as a point of reference in the galaxy. Trade routes were mapped according to human colonies. Diplomatic schedules were coordinated with human input. and interstellar navigation often used Earth-based sensors as a guide. When humans stopped responding, these civilizations grew increasingly concerned. Initially, they speculated about natural disasters. Maybe a star had erupted nearby, or a cosmic storm had disrupted communications. Some feared internal conflict within human society, assuming that political struggles or rebellion might have disrupted the flow of messages. Rumors spread quickly through interstellar channels. Fleet commanders and ambassadors exchanged reports in hushed tones, trying to determine the cause of the silence. The lack of any clear answer only deepened the anxiety. Within human space, panic had not yet taken hold. Many people remained blissfully unaware of the growing concern beyond Earth. Life on the floating cities, on the space stations, and within the vast colonies continued as usual. Children played in zero-gravity parks. Scientists conducted experiments that bent the boundaries of physics, and trade ships carried resources between planets. The automated systems that maintained the colonies were efficient and reliable, so even when communication failures occurred, everyday life carried on. Yet, beneath this surface of normalcy, a subtle tension had begun to grow. Colony governors and fleet captains who could no longer contact Earth began holding emergency meetings, analyzing data, and preparing contingency plans. Small doubts turned into larger questions. Why was the planet not responding? That had something catastrophic happened? Were humans under attack? These questions, once hypothetical, were now urgent, and no one had answers. As days turned into weeks, the disappearance of human signals became impossible to ignore. The entire regions of space that had previously been vibrant with activity were now eerily quiet. Ships sent to investigate returned with disturbing reports. Outposts and colonies appeared abandoned, with no signs of life. Lights flickered in deserted stations, and life support systems continued running automatically, maintaining the illusion of normality even in the absence of human presence. Engineers and explorers were perplexed. The automated systems were functioning perfectly, yet there was no one to interact with them. Scientists on Earth and aboard research stations tried to make sense of the data, but even they were stumped. Something unprecedented was happening, something that defied the understanding of the most brilliant minds in human history. Fear, though still nascent among humans themselves, began to ripple through the alien civilizations observing these events. The silence created a void that the galaxy had never experienced before. Humans had been energetic, noisy, and omnipresent. Their presence felt in trade, diplomacy, exploration, and scientific discovery. Their sudden absence left a vacuum, and with it came speculation and paranoia. What had happened to humanity? Some alien leaders feared disease or a plague of unknown origin. Others suspected a catastrophic environmental failure, perhaps a collapse of Earth's systems or the sudden destruction of a major colony. But the darkest thoughts were the most widespread. Had humans been attacked? And if so, by whom? Fleet commanders began organizing reconnaissance missions. While interstellar councils debated emergency measures, there was no consensus, only rising fear. Every report from human space seemed more confusing and alarming than the last. And as time passed, the silence itself became a source of dread. On Earth, despite the outward appearance of calm, subtle preparations had begun. Humanity's advanced AI systems monitored the galaxy and collected information continuously. The systems had detected anomalies that humans were not yet aware of, signs of potential threats far beyond known comprehension. Even as humans continued their daily lives, the AI quietly adjusted the colony's automation, rerouted ships, and reinforced security protocols. Humans were blissfully unaware that their world was slowly becoming self-sufficient in anticipation of a time when they might not be able to respond to emergencies directly. Their routines carried on, but the groundwork for survival had already been laid in ways that only the most advanced minds could understand. The galaxy, meanwhile, saw only the disappearance of signals, not the preparation that made it possible for humans to remain safe. Reports from travelers and explorers painted a picture that grew increasingly alarming. Starship captains who ventured near human colonies described an emptiness that was unnatural. The cities glimmered in the darkness, but the lights seemed hollow, almost as if they were shadows of life rather than life itself. Communication arrays broadcast faint pulses that carried no message, a ghostly echo of human activity. Some ships recorded fleeting glimpses of human figures, only to find that when approached, no one was present. It was as if the people themselves had vanished into thin air, leaving only machines and structures behind. These accounts spread quickly, heightening fear among those who relied on humans for guidance, trade, and security. The very consistency and reliability that had once made humanity trustworthy now became a source of terror. Alien scholars tried to make sense of the silence, using every tool at their disposal. They combed through historical records, compared energy signatures, analyzed patterns of human behavior, and attempted to predict what might have happened. Every theory had gaps, and no explanation seemed to fit all the observed phenomena. Some began to question their own understanding of reality. Could humans have evolved beyond the need for direct communication? Had they discovered some form of hibernation or suspended animation that allowed them to survive without interaction? Others considered more sinister possibilities. Had humanity developed a technology so advanced that it could render itself invisible or unreachable? The uncertainty was worse than the knowledge of danger. Fear thrives in the absence of understanding, and by remaining silent, humanity had unknowingly created a galaxy-wide state of tension. As the weeks turned into months, the silence began to affect interstellar politics. Alliances weakened as mistrust spread. Governments debated whether to send fleets into human space, fearing that any misstep might provoke retaliation from a species that no longer communicated. Trade routes were disrupted, and some colonies began rationing supplies in case the silence meant that help from Earth would never arrive. Historians speculated about the implications, comparing the events to great disasters in galactic history. Every decision made in response to the silence carried enormous risk. The galaxy had never before faced the disappearance of a civilization so central to interstellar affairs. Humans had become both invisible and omnipresent in their absence, their silence echoing across light years and striking fear into the hearts of every alien species that had ever interacted with them. Despite the growing dread among alien civilizations, humans themselves remained unaware of the fear they inspired. They continued their lives with remarkable normalcy, their focus on exploration, creation, and scientific discovery undisturbed. On floating cities, children laughed in gravity-free gardens, unaware that their absence from interstellar communications was being studied and feared. Scientists pursued experiments that could bend the very fabric of reality, unaware that the rest of the galaxy was beginning to wonder whether humanity had disappeared entirely. The contrast between human normalcy and galactic panic was stark. What seemed ordinary to humans was extraordinary to the rest of the galaxy. Their routines, their innovation, and their confidence only heightened the mystery. By continuing to live and work as usual, humans unknowingly intensified the fear and speculation that spread like wildfire through alien networks. The silence also began to reveal weaknesses in alien civilizations. Many species had relied on humans for trade, technology, and guidance. Without regular communication, economies faltered, military coordination suffered, and political alliances strained under the pressure. Some colonies attempted to act independently, but the lack of information made planning impossible. Leaders realized that the galaxy had become fragile in ways no one had anticipated. Humanity, by remaining silent, had forced the galaxy to confront its own vulnerabilities. The longer the silence continued, the greater the tension, until every civilization that had ever interacted with humans felt the growing pressure of uncertainty and fear. In a way, humans had become a silent force, their absence more powerful than any display of strength. Finally, after months of mystery and speculation, the galaxy began to understand that something unprecedented was happening. The disappearance was not temporary, not a minor glitch, and not the result of an easily solved problem. Humans were truly absent from communication channels, their colonies eerily quiet, their fleets unresponsive. Panic, speculation, and fear reached a critical mass. Every decision now carried the weight of potential catastrophe. Alliances were tested, fleets mobilized, and every civilization reconsidered its relationship with humanity. The galaxy had never before encountered a species capable of creating such profound uncertainty simply by ceasing to interact. Humanity's silence had become its own form of power, a force that none could predict, none could challenge, and none could ignore. In the absence of humans, the galaxy trembled. The silence of humanity, which had begun as a subtle irregularity in communications, had now grown into a force that spread fear and uncertainty throughout the galaxy. What had once been dismissed as technical glitches or temporary disruptions now became impossible to ignore. Alien civilizations that had long relied on human trade, guidance, and diplomacy were now facing a void so complete that panic began to take root in even the most disciplined societies. Fleet commanders, politicians, and scientists alike realized that something extraordinary had occurred, something they could not explain, something that challenged every assumption they had about humans and their capabilities. The lack of answers only intensified the dread. Every passing day without contact made the mystery deeper, and every new report of strange phenomena in human space made the galaxy feel smaller and more dangerous than ever before. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Small fleets that had ventured near human colonies reported sightings that seemed impossible. Lights flickered across deserted cities in patterns that resembled signals, but when approached, there was no one there. Automated factories hummed and worked, maintaining production without pause, yet there were no humans to oversee or control them. Some ships detected fleeting shadows of figures moving in corridors, but these figures would vanish the moment they were observed directly. Engineers, astronomers, and fleet commanders were baffled. Data logs recorded anomalies that seemed intentional, patterns that could not be explained by natural phenomena alone. Many began to speculate that humans had developed technologies far beyond their understanding, technologies that allowed them to exist without being seen, to manipulate space, energy, or even time in ways that defied known science. Fear transformed curiosity into terror. If humans were capable of hiding in plain sight, what else could they do? Alien governments began holding emergency councils to discuss the implications. In these chambers, debates grew heated and alliances strained. Some leaders called for immediate military action, arguing that the sudden disappearance of humans could not be natural. If humanity had developed a power capable of rendering themselves invisible or unreachable, they might also have weapons or strategies that could threaten entire civilizations. Others argued for caution, suggesting that any hasty action could provoke a species whose motives were unknown and whose capabilities were unmatched. Merchants and trade regulators fretted over the disruption of supply chains and economic networks that had depended on human colonies. The absence of humans was no longer a mystery, it was a crisis, one that had ripple effects across commerce, politics, and military planning. Every corner of the galaxy felt the tension mounting as fear spread. Explorers and scouts who ventured into human space reported even stranger phenomena. Entire systems appeared abandoned, yet lights continued to glow in perfectly synchronized patterns. Power grids ran smoothly, as if maintained by invisible hands. Artificial intelligence systems carried out their routines without oversight, preserving the illusion of normal life. In some colonies, communication systems sent automated responses that mimicked human operators so convincingly that any observer could believe humans were still present. Ships that attempted to land on certain planets were met with automated defenses that fired without warning, yet no humans were present to command them. It was as if the very infrastructure of human civilization had become a weapon, a silent, enigmatic force that confused and intimidated anyone who came near. The galaxy began to realize that this was no ordinary disappearance. Humanity had created a presence that existed even in their absence, a force that challenged all expectations. Reports from human space became increasingly disturbing. Travelers described entire cities that seemed frozen in time, streets illuminated but devoid of motion, markets stocked with goods but no customers, vehicles hovering in precise formation as if awaiting instructions that would never come. Observation decks recorded human silhouettes appearing briefly in corridors before vanishing entirely. Some fleets reported encountering massive starships cloaked in forms that made them invisible to sensors, moving silently across star systems. These ships carried weapon systems, energy shields, and advanced propulsion that far surpassed anything previously encountered in the galaxy. Analysts tried to make sense of the data, but no explanation satisfied all the facts. If humans had truly vanished, these phenomena should not exist. And if they had not vanished, then the species had somehow transcended every known limit of technology and strategy. Fear transformed into awe, and awe quickly became paranoia. Alien scholars, historians, and military strategists debated theories late into their cycles. Could humans have developed some form of suspended animation, allowing them to remain alive without interacting with the galaxy? Were these strange sightings the result of advanced artificial intelligence managing human systems autonomously? Or was it something far more terrifying, a deliberate test by humans, an exhibition of patience and strategy designed to measure how the galaxy would react when deprived of their presence? Every theory seemed plausible and impossible at the same time. No civilization had ever experienced such a profound absence paired with such undeniable activity. Humans had effectively weaponized silence, and the galaxy was only beginning to comprehend its implications. The more people studied, the less they understood, and this uncertainty created tension that spread from diplomatic chambers to military command centers. Panic began to infiltrate daily life in alien societies. Trade networks faltered as planets waited for shipments from Earth that never arrived. Security protocols were heightened as fleets patrolled borders that had previously been considered safe. Some colonies resorted to rationing, fearing that the human silence might signal some catastrophic event that would leave them stranded without resources. Political leaders faced dissent from citizens who demanded answers. Was humanity gone? Were they still alive but watching in silence? Or had they become a threat beyond understanding? Each day without clarity brought new measures of caution, new restrictions, and new fears. The very act of silence had created an atmosphere of suspicion and dread that no other civilization had ever known. Even within human space, the effects of their absence were profound. Automated systems maintained cities, fleets, and colonies with precision, but there was no warmth, no life to interact with. Scientists and engineers who had designed these systems marveled at their complexity, unaware that their own creations had become instruments of fear. Ships operated independently, defending colonies and maintaining supply lines, yet without humans on board. These fleets were silent witnesses to the unfolding mystery. The humans themselves went about their routines on Earth and in secure stations, oblivious to the panic they were causing. Children played, teachers taught, and scientists experimented, all unaware that the rest of the galaxy had already begun to tremble at the possibility of human power. The contrast between human normalcy and galactic terror was stark, almost surreal, and it highlighted just how unpredictable humans had become in the eyes of other civilizations. Stories and rumors from explorers only intensified the fear. Some spoke of entire fleets lying in wait around human systems, cloaked and silent, ready to respond to any perceived threat. Others described cities that seemed to anticipate the actions of outsiders, activating defenses and changing configurations as if they had a mind of their own. Some fleets reported being followed by shadows of ships that could not be detected until they revealed themselves at critical moments. These stories spread rapidly through the galaxy, each one more terrifying than the last. Scholars tried to verify the accounts, but the more they investigated, the more inexplicable the events became. Humanity's absence had created a presence that was stronger, stranger, and more powerful than anyone had imagined. What had started as a disappearance had become a psychological weapon, sowing doubt, fear, and awe across countless civilizations. Military commanders struggled to adapt to the uncertainty. Fleets were mobilized defensively, yet no one knew what they were defending against. Plans for preemptive strikes were debated and often cancelled for fear of provoking an unpredictable response. Every move was weighed against a species that might be absent, or that might be watching silently from some hidden vantage point. The galaxy was caught in a state of paralysis, unable to act decisively because every action carried potential catastrophic consequences. Humanity's silence had become the ultimate form of control, not through aggression or confrontation, but through the simple act of not acting at all. The galaxy, once confident in its stability, now existed in a state of tense anticipation, waiting for something it could neither predict nor understand. Meanwhile, humans continued their lives in complete oblivion to the chaos they had indirectly caused. On Earth, leaders met to discuss the next stages of exploration and development. Colonies carried on, conducting research, teaching, and expanding settlements. Scientific discoveries continued at a breathtaking pace, as if the universe itself were unaware of the panic it had inspired. Even as alien civilizations debated war, trade, and diplomacy, humans pursued knowledge and progress, moving with the quiet confidence of a species that had survived countless challenges and mastered its environment. The irony of their situation was immense. While the galaxy trembled at the mystery of human silence, humans themselves were entirely focused on creation, exploration, and understanding, completely unaware of the fear that radiated across light years. The rumors, speculation, and mounting terror eventually reached a point where the galaxy could no longer maintain its fragile stability. Factions formed, alliances shifted, and some civilizations began to prepare for conflict, assuming that humanity's disappearance might signal a threat too great to ignore. The silence that humans had unknowingly maintained had become a test, a measure of how the galaxy would react in the absence of its most enigmatic and capable species. Fear, once subtle, had turned into obsession. Every report of an anomaly, every unexplained phenomenon, and every failure of communication was magnified, creating a feedback loop of suspicion and dread. The galaxy was no longer just cautious, it was terrified, unsure if the humans they had once admired were gone, hiding, or preparing for something beyond comprehension. By this point, it was clear that the disappearance of humanity was no ordinary event. What had begun as minor communication failures had escalated into a crisis that affected diplomacy, trade, military strategy, and public confidence across countless civilizations. Humans, in their oblivious normalcy, had inadvertently created a galaxy-wide psychological phenomenon. Their silence had become a weapon, more potent than any fleet, more frightening than any known alien species, and more influential than all forms of diplomacy combined. The galaxy had learned, in the most terrifying way possible, that the absence of a single species could alter the balance of power, instill fear, and create uncertainty on a scale no one had imagined. Rumors had transformed into terror, and terror had transformed into a widespread, paralyzing anxiety that no one could easily overcome. Humanity, without intending to, had become a force that even absence could not diminish. For months, the galaxy had been caught in a state of fear and uncertainty. Humans had disappeared from all communication channels, and alien civilizations had been left scrambling for answers. Entire fleets had been dispatched to investigate. Diplomats debated in endless councils, and colonies prepared for disaster, yet none could find a definitive explanation for the silence. Rumors of strange phenomena in human space had grown, from ghostly lights in deserted cities to massive fleets appearing and disappearing without explanation. Panic and speculation had reached a tipping point. Some feared humanity was destroyed. Others feared humanity had evolved into something beyond understanding, something that could challenge the balance of power in the galaxy itself. But what no one suspected was that humans had not been absent at all. They had been watching, waiting, and preparing for a threat that would test not just Earth, but the entire species' survival. The revelation began subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a whisper before a roar. Scouts and reconnaissance ships detected unusual energy readings emanating from the outer reaches of the solar system. Initially, these readings were thought to be anomalies caused by cosmic events, perhaps remnants of supernova or gravitational disturbances from black holes. But as more sensors came online, the truth became clearer. Humans had not vanished. They had entered a coordinated state of global hibernation, a plan executed with precision and foresight. Every colony, Every station, every fleet had been carefully managed by artificial intelligence systems designed to operate autonomously. Cities continued to function, fleets maintained positions, and supply chains ran without human oversight, giving the impression of absence while ensuring the survival of the species. The galaxy, which had assumed humanity was either destroyed or hiding, now faced a startling reality. Humans had orchestrated their disappearance with purpose. When the first humans reawakened, the effect was immediate and profound. Automated systems gently guided the newly conscious population through their routines, ensuring that life resumed smoothly despite months of suspended activity. Cities that had seemed empty now filled with movement. Starships that had appeared abandoned now carried crews ready for exploration and defense. Scientists resumed experiments that had been paused in the AI-controlled silence. Children returned to schools designed to teach knowledge and skills far beyond what previous generations had imagined. The reawakening was not chaotic. It was precise, deliberate, and efficient. Humans had planned for every contingency, leaving no room for error. The galaxy, however, was completely unprepared for what would come next. When alien fleets attempted to re-enter human space to investigate, they were met with an astonishing sight. Ships that had previously seemed cloaked or absent now revealed themselves, massive and sophisticated beyond anything known. Their hulls shimmered with advanced materials that could resist conventional weaponry, and energy shields flickered in patterns that suggested intelligence and strategy. Weapons systems were fully operational, yet there was no aggression. The humans had not attacked, they had merely returned. The fleets that had feared confrontation now understood that their assumptions about humanity were flawed. What had seemed like disappearance and vulnerability was, in reality, a demonstration of control, foresight, and unmatched technological mastery. Humanity had revealed that absence itself could be a form of power, capable of commanding attention and respect across the galaxy. The impact of this revelation on alien civilizations was profound. Leaders who had debated preemptive strikes now realized how dangerous it would have been to provoke humanity. Diplomats who had feared the worst understood that humans had the ability to manage entire colonies and fleets without direct oversight, a feat that no other species could accomplish. Trade networks, which had been disrupted by silence, resumed smoothly. But now with a newfound respect for the precision and capability of humans, fear was replaced by awe and awe by a cautious reverence. The galaxy had been reminded that humans were not merely participants in interstellar affairs. They were architects of their own destiny, capable of strategies and foresight that no one could predict. Their silence had been both a shield and a test, demonstrating that power was not always about aggression, but about patience, planning, and the ability to act at the right moment. As humans resumed direct activity, the full scope of their preparation became evident. Automated fleets had maintained positions around strategic systems, ready to respond to any threat. Cities had been managed to prevent collapse, and colonies had been supplied and defended without human intervention. The precision and foresight of this operation stunned even the most technologically advanced alien civilizations. Historians and strategists tried to comprehend how a species could execute such a plan. Scientists analyzed the AI systems that had maintained humanity's absence, realizing that humans had created a network of intelligence capable of functioning autonomously, predicting threats, and adapting to unforeseen circumstances. The galaxy, which had feared humanity's silence, now recognized that humans had been in control the entire time, a revelation that reshaped every understanding of their capabilities. The re-emergence of humans also brought clarity to the strange phenomena that had been reported during their absence. Ghostly lights, disappearing fleets, and automated defenses that had bewildered alien observers were now understood as the product of human planning. Every anomaly had been intentional or unavoidable due to the advanced automation systems in place. Humans had used these phenomena not to frighten but to ensure survival while remaining undisturbed. The galaxy, however, had interpreted these measures as signs of immense and potentially hostile power. In hindsight, the fear that had spread was understandable, but it had been based on incomplete knowledge. The revelation of human strategy, coordination, and foresight transformed fear into admiration, and admiration into cautious respect. The galaxy had learned a powerful lesson about patience, observation, and the consequences of underestimating a species capable of planning on a scale never before imagined. The psychological impact of humanity's return was as significant as the practical consequences. Alien civilizations that had feared the worst were now forced to reevaluate their assumptions. Leaders who had anticipated conflict realized that diplomacy would now require a new level of respect and understanding. Military strategists recalculated the balance of power, acknowledging that humans possessed capabilities far beyond what had been observed. Economists and traders understood that the resumption of activity would be accompanied by unprecedented efficiency and innovation. Across the galaxy, the realization spread that humanity had mastered not just technology, but the art of strategy, patience, and psychological influence. Their silence had been a test, and the reawakening had demonstrated a level of mastery that few could have imagined. Despite the awe and fear they inspired, Humans themselves remained focused on their own priorities. They were not acting to dominate or threaten. They were pursuing exploration, discovery, and the continuation of their civilization. Colonies resumed educational programs, scientific research, and cultural activities. Starships launched on missions of exploration, charting new systems and establishing contact with civilizations that had been hesitant during the period of silence. Humans demonstrated that their power lay not only in technological capability, but in the ability to act decisively, precisely, and with purpose. Their absence had been a lesson to the galaxy, and their return was a demonstration of the mastery they had always possessed. Civilization, both human and alien, had been tested, and humanity had emerged as a force whose influence was undeniable. The re-emergence also reshaped interstellar politics. Diplomatic channels, once strained by the absence of human guidance, were now filled with discussions, treaties, and alliances that reflected the new understanding of human capability. Formerly skeptical or aggressive civilizations approached cautiously, aware that any misstep could have consequences beyond their comprehension. Trade networks were re-established with enhanced efficiency. As human colonies resumed production and interstellar logistics were restored, military planners adjusted strategies to account for the unprecedented technological and organizational skills displayed by humans. The galaxy had shifted, not through conflict, but through the quiet power of preparation, foresight, and disciplined action. Humanity had demonstrated that silence, when wielded strategically, could be more powerful than fleets, weapons, or armies. In the aftermath of the revelation, the galaxy slowly began to accept a new reality. Humans had shown that they were capable of orchestrating events on a scale that no other civilization had previously attempted. Their absence had created fear, uncertainty, and speculation. Yet it had also revealed the strength of their civilization, the precision of their planning, and the foresight of their leadership. Every colony, every fleet, every automated system had contributed to the maintenance of life and civilization during the period of silence, a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. The galaxy had been tested, and humanity had proven that it could survive, adapt, and influence events even without direct interaction. Their return was not just a resumption of normal life. It was a demonstration of mastery over both the self and the universe around them. Finally, the galaxy came to understand that humanity's silence had not been a sign of weakness, vulnerability, or defeat. It had been a deliberate choice, executed with precision and foresight, to ensure the survival and continuity of the species in the face of an unforeseen cosmic threat. Humans had demonstrated that power could manifest not only in action, but in restraint. The absence itself had become a weapon, a force of influence, a lesson in strategy that left civilizations across the stars in awe. Fear had transformed into respect, and respect into a cautious acknowledgement of the potential of humanity. The revelation marked a turning point, not just in the relationship between humans and alien civilizations, but in the understanding of what a species could achieve when patience, intelligence, and foresight were combined. Humanity had fallen silent. The galaxy had trembled. And now, in their return, the truth was finally understood. The return of humanity marked not just the end of silence, but the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. What had once been panic and fear transformed into cautious respect, and the civilizations of the stars began to understand the true scope of human capability. Alien fleets that had mobilized in preparation for disaster now lowered their shields, observing the humans with curiosity and awe. Diplomats approached cautiously, aware that any misstep could still provoke a reaction from a species that had demonstrated an unprecedented mastery of foresight and planning. Traders, scientists, and explorers alike marveled at the efficiency and sophistication with which humans resumed their activities. The galaxy had learned a lesson. The absence of humans had been far more powerful than their presence, and their reappearance demonstrated that strategy, patience, and intelligence could wield influence as effectively as any weapon. Humanity's reemergence was deliberate and organized. Cities that had been maintained automatically sprang back to life with the activity of people, moving purposefully through streets and corridors. Markets reopened, schools resumed, and laboratories buzzed with experiments that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. Ships left ports to continue exploration, establish trade routes, and ensure security across previously unsettled regions. The humans themselves were unaware of the full impact of their absence on alien civilizations. Yet their very presence now commanded attention and respect. The systems and networks they had designed to operate autonomously during their silence now seamlessly reintegrated with human oversight, demonstrating the extraordinary adaptability of the species. Humans had not merely survived their self-imposed disappearance, they had used it as a demonstration of their foresight, control, and capability. Alien civilizations watched these developments with a mixture of awe and caution. Leaders who had once considered preemptive strikes now approached negotiations with extreme care, recognizing that humans could not only survive in isolation but manage entire fleets and colonies without direct intervention. The precision and foresight of human planning left alien strategists reconsidering their assumptions about interstellar power. Even the most confident species began to acknowledge that humans possessed capabilities that were unmatched across the stars. Fleet commanders reviewed their strategies, understanding that the humans' absence had been a deliberate display of strategic patience, a demonstration of their ability to control not just their own fate, but also the perception and actions of others. The galaxy had been humbled by the revelation of human mastery. Trade networks, previously disrupted by the disappearance of humans, resumed with remarkable efficiency. Alien merchants found that the return of humans brought stability, resources, and technological innovation that had been inaccessible during the period of silence. Supply chains once thought broken were restored almost instantly, demonstrating that human planning extended not only to survival but also to logistical precision. Colonies that had feared isolation now had access to resources, support, and guidance once more. Education and cultural exchange resumed, strengthening the bonds between humans and alien civilizations. The galaxy began to recognize that humanity's strength lay not just in technology or military capability, but in their ability to organize, adapt, and influence systems on a massive scale. Their silence had been a lesson, and their return a demonstration of how carefully measured strategy could achieve outcomes that no other species could replicate. The galaxy began to recognize that humanity's strength lay not just in technology or military capability, but in their ability to organize, adapt, and influence systems on a massive scale. Their silence had been a lesson, and their return a demonstration of how carefully measured strategy could achieve outcomes that no other species could replicate. Military forces that had been deployed cautiously during the absence of humans were now fully aware of the magnitude of the threat they had underestimated. Fleets that had assumed humans were vulnerable or defeated now encountered ships equipped with technology and strategies that had exceeded anything previously encountered. Energy shields could withstand attacks that would have destroyed entire fleets of conventional warships, while propulsion systems allowed for unprecedented speed and maneuverability. Automated defense networks previously mistaken for abandoned or malfunctioning systems now operated in coordination with human crews, revealing a level of strategic depth that confounded alien commanders. What had seemed like a disappearance was, in truth, an elaborate demonstration of power, patience, and foresight, a reminder that humans had mastered both survival and influence in ways that no other civilization could match. The psychological impact on alien civilizations was profound. Fear transformed into awe, but awe brought with it a new layer of caution. Diplomats now approached humans with unprecedented respect, recognizing that underestimating them could have catastrophic consequences. Military strategists recalibrated their understanding of interstellar balance, realizing that humans could control events at a scale that transcended conventional warfare. Scholars and historians began to document the events of the period of silence, trying to understand how a species could influence the galaxy without taking direct action. Every civilization that had once doubted human capability now faced a truth that could not be ignored. Humanity had used absence as a tool of influence, demonstrating that strategy and patience could wield power as effectively as fleets of warships or armies of soldiers. As humanity resumed normal activity, it became clear that their silence had not weakened them. It had strengthened their position in the galaxy. Colonies continued to thrive under human guidance, trade networks expanded, and alliances strengthened. Diplomacy shifted toward cooperation and mutual respect, as civilizations realized that humans were not aggressive conquerors but masters of foresight and planning. Alien species that had feared confrontation now understood that humans could control events without direct engagement, a capability that fundamentally changed the nature of interstellar relations. The galaxy had been forced to adapt to the absence of humans, and now it had to adapt to their return, acknowledging a level of skill, intelligence, and strategic vision that few could match. The reappearance of humans also brought a renewed focus on exploration and discovery. Starships that had remained in standby during the period of silence were now deployed to chart new systems, to establish contact with distant civilizations, and gather knowledge that had previously been inaccessible. Scientists resumed experiments that pushed the limits of physics, biology, and engineering. Colonies began implementing innovations in agriculture, energy, and infrastructure that had been developed during the autonomous period of silence. Humanity demonstrated that absence had not hindered progress. It had allowed systems to operate optimally while humans focused on preparation and strategy. The galaxy, witnessing this, realized that humans had not only survived a period of isolation but had emerged stronger, more capable, and more respected than ever before. Cultural exchange flourished as well. Artists, musicians, and writers resumed their work, creating new expressions of human experience that inspired alien audiences. Education programs, previously limited by the need for human oversight, now expanded to include advanced curricula for both humans and willing alien students. Language, art, science, and philosophy all spread across the stars, creating bonds of understanding and appreciation that had been temporarily suspended during the period of silence. Humanity's absence had left a void in interstellar culture, but their return brought renewed vitality, creativity, and connection. Civilizations that had feared the worst now saw the humans not as conquerors, but as a species capable of shaping the galaxy through ingenuity, foresight, and collaboration. The lasting impact of humanity's silence and return became apparent in the political landscape of the galaxy. Alliances were strengthened, treaties were rewritten, and strategic plans were revised to account for the presence of a species capable of operating independently, decisively, and with unprecedented foresight. Leaders who had once assumed dominance realized that underestimating humans was a mistake with potentially catastrophic consequences. Military planners understood that humans could influence the galaxy through preparation and precision rather than brute force. Diplomats recognized that negotiation with humans required a nuanced understanding of strategy, patience, and foresight. The galaxy had been humbled by the demonstration of human capability, and it would never view the species in the same way again. Humanity itself, however, remained focused on its own priorities. They did not seek to dominate or threaten. They pursued knowledge, exploration, and cultural advancement. Their fleets patrolled and explored, their colonies flourished, and their cities continued to thrive. Humans demonstrated that the power of absence could be as influential as the power of presence, and that mastery over strategy, patience, and foresight could shape the galaxy in ways that no other species could achieve. The silence had been a test, a preparation, and a demonstration all at once. Its conclusion marked a turning point in galactic history, not through conflict, but through the display of intelligence, adaptability, and careful planning. By the end of the period of silence, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity's reappearance had altered the balance of power, reshaped diplomacy, and demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities of the species. Fear had transformed into respect, awe, and cautious cooperation. Alien civilizations had been reminded that humans could influence events on a scale that no other species had achieved. Trade networks, political alliances, and scientific collaboration all expanded in the wake of the revelation. Humanity had used absence as a tool, demonstrating that patience, foresight, and strategic thinking could wield influence as effectively as fleets, armies, or advanced weapons. The galaxy had learned an indelible lesson: when humans fall silent, every civilization trembles, and when they return, every action carries the weight of foresight and mastery. Even as the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, humans themselves continued to grow and evolve. They advanced their technology, explored new frontiers, and strengthened the bonds between colonies and civilizations. The events of the period of silence became a foundational story, remembered not as a time of weakness but as a demonstration of strategic brilliance. Children learned of the silence and return as a lesson in preparation, patience, and foresight. Leaders studied it as an example of planning and resilience. Historians documented it as a turning point in interstellar history. Humanity had proven that its influence did not rely on constant action or aggression. It relied on intelligence, foresight, and the ability to shape events indirectly. Their silence had been a force, their return a revelation, and the galaxy would never forget it. Ultimately, the silence and reemergence of humanity left a lasting legacy. Alien civilizations continued to interact with humans with newfound respect and caution, aware of the species' capabilities and the consequences of underestimating them. Diplomacy, trade, exploration, and cultural exchange thrived under this new understanding. Humanity had demonstrated that true power lay not in domination, but in mastery of strategy, patience, technology, and foresight. The galaxy, once fearful and uncertain, now understood that humanity's influence extended far beyond presence or absence. Silence had taught the galaxy a lesson, and the humans' return had ensured that this lesson would never be forgotten. Civilization, interstellar relations, and the understanding of power had all been transformed. The galaxy had been tested, humanity had prevailed, and the future had been irrevocably shaped by the species that had mastered the art of silence.